Welcome, dear dreamers, to Dreamy Tales Universe. Tonight, we're journeying to the heart of the Caribbean, where golden sands meet the whispering breeze, to hear the tale of the girl who spun gold. Long ago, on an island kissed by sea breezes and cradled by the arms of emerald hills, there lived a young girl named Quashiba. Her home was a small thatched hut tucked between swaying coconut palms and rows of sugarcane, where the sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber. She lived there with her mother, a woman named Matoria, whose eyes still held fire, even as her hands grew old. They didn't have much, a single goat, a patch of cassava, and a spindle passed down from mother to daughter. But what they lacked in riches, Matoria made up for with stories and songs and laughter that danced on the wind. She loved her daughter fiercely. And oh, how proud she was of her. Quashiba had nimble fingers and a spirit as soft as silk. By day, she spun threads finer than any the village had seen. By night, she sang songs in the moonlight, her voice smooth like molasses and gentle like rain. Her thread shimmered like moonbeams and gleamed like the foam on the sea, and Matoria would smile with pride in her chest and say, "Child, your hands hold magic." But sometimes, pride, when left unchecked, becomes a tricky thing. One day, as Matoria walked to market with a basket of thread, she passed by a cluster of gossiping women, the kind who spoke more with their eyebrows than with words. They chuckled behind their hands, mocking her worn skirt, her patched shawl. Matoria stood tall. She would not be made small. "My daughter's thread be finer than silk from the east," she declared, loud and proud. "So fine, it shine like gold." Why, if she wished, she could spin plain cotton into pure gold. The women fell silent. Their eyes widened. One of them, a servant of the prince, raised her brow and said, "Is that so?" It wasn't long before the words reached the palace. You see, in those days, the young prince was seeking a wife, not just any woman, but someone rare, someone worthy of being queen. He was handsome and sharp, dressed always in soft linens and beads of carved wood and shell, and he loved one thing above all else, treasure. When he heard tale of a village girl who could spin gold from thread, his curiosity was stirred. "Bring her to me," he commanded. "If she's truly what they say, then I shall see it for myself." So it was that Quashiba, without knowing what boast had been made in her name, was summoned to the palace. She arrived with her mother, her hands trembling, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. The palace gates loomed high, carved from mahogany, wrapped in flowering vines. Inside, the floors gleamed and the air smelled of jasmine and spice. The prince, seated on his carved throne of coral and shell, eyed her carefully. "I have heard," he said slowly, "that you can spin thread into gold." Quashiba's eyes darted to her mother's, who looked away, ashamed now of her loose tongue. "My lord," Quashiba began, "I spin thread fine and strong, but—" The prince cut her off with a wave of his hand. "You shall prove it. Tonight." And with that, he led her to a room sealed with a heavy door. Inside, mounds of dull, rough thread piled high like hills. A single spinning wheel sat in the middle, old and silent. "If by sunrise you have turned this into gold," the prince said, his voice smooth and final, "then you shall become my queen. But if you fail, well, I have no use for liars." He turned, and the door closed with a heavy clang. Quashiba sank to the ground. Her hands, so skilled at weaving dreams into thread, now lay useless at her side. Her eyes filled with tears as the moon rose and cast silver light across the room. How could she spin gold? That was not her gift. Her thread held beauty, yes, and grace, but not gold. Outside the window, the sea whispered. The stars blinked above. Inside, Quashiba wept. And so, dreamers, our tale begins, with pride, with pressure, and with a promise made too quickly. The night stretches long and full of questions. But fear not, for in the world of tales, even in the darkest hour, magic often finds a way in. The stars drifted slowly across the velvet sky, like grains of sugar poured into a bowl too big for the world. Inside the palace chamber, Quashiba sat curled beside the spinning wheel, her tears glistening on her cheeks like dew on banana leaves. Her hands, once so confident, now trembled, not with weakness, but with fear. The mounds of dull thread surrounded her, tall and heavy, like waves she could not swim through. She had tried. Oh, how she had tried, fingers twisting and turning the spindle as she had done since childhood. But no matter how many times she spun, the thread stayed just that, thread. No gold. No magic. Just cotton and hope. The night deepened, and the room grew still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, a sound. Tap tap. Tap tap tap. Not at the door, no. It came from the shadows. From somewhere just behind the wheel. Quashiba held her breath. A soft shimmer flickered near the window. And then, from the darkest corner of the room, stepped a creature no taller than a market basket, his skin a golden brown hue that glowed as if lit from within. His eyes sparkled like fireflies in the bush. He wore a cap made from woven straw, and his feet tapped a rhythm of their own on the smooth stone floor. "Evening to you, child," he said, with a voice like the rustle of palm fronds in the breeze. Quashiba blinked. Was she dreaming? Had sleep wrapped her in strange magic? The creature bowed low with a flourish. "I be called Litman," he said. "And I knows things others don't. I knows how thread can shine like sunlight, how cotton can sing with gold." Quashiba stared, unsure whether to run or speak. You can spin gold," she whispered. Litman grinned. "That I can. But nothing in this world come for free, nah. Every magic got a price." She looked down at her hands, then back at the piles of thread that mocked her with every breath. She thought of the prince's cold eyes, of the promise he had made, and the danger in his words. "What would you ask of me?" she said softly. Litman danced a slow circle around her, tapping his toes and humming a strange tune. "Just a little thing, dearie. A keepsake, a memory, a thing from your heart. What you got on ya?" Quashiba reached to her neck and removed the small pendant her mother had given her, a simple bead on a string, worn smooth by years of touch. She held it out. Litman snatched it with delight. "Deal struck," he said. And with that, he leapt toward the spinning wheel. What followed was nothing short of wonder. Litman's hands moved faster than a hummingbird's wings. The wheel spun so swiftly it hummed, and the thread, oh, the thread, transformed before her eyes. From dull gray to a warm glow, then to full, gleaming gold. The piles of string dwindled. The gold stacked high. Quashiba gasped, eyes wide, heart pounding not with fear, but awe. In what felt like the space between two heartbeats, the work was done. Litman brushed his hands and gave her a sly wink. "Now you sleep well, golden girl. And remember, magic always remembers who it helps." Then, with a soft pop and shimmer of light, he vanished into the dark, leaving behind only the scent of cinnamon and starlight. When the prince opened the chamber door at dawn, the light of the rising sun caught the gold and filled the room with a glow that stole the breath from his chest. "Marvelous," he whispered, his voice now rich with greed. "But let us see if this girl can do it again." He led Quashiba down the hall to a second room, larger than the first, and filled to bursting with even more thread. "By morning," he said, his tone gentle and cruel all at once, "spin this too, and you shall be mine forever." The door closed once more with a heavy clang. Quashiba stood in the silence, her breath steady, her hands clasped at her chest. She waited. She knew. And soon enough, the golden glow shimmered again, and Litman appeared, his straw cap tipped and a grin wide on his face. "Another round?" he asked. Quashiba nodded. "What will it cost this time?" The little man circled her again, slower now, his eyes more curious. "Something sweeter this time, maybe your mother's ring." She hesitated, then slipped it from her finger. Litman snatched it like a bird snatching fruit from a tree. And once again, the thread turned to gold, brighter, richer, lovelier than before. Dear listener, if you're still tucked in with me, enjoying this tale under a cozy blanket or the hush of night, I'd be ever so grateful if you clicked that subscribe button. These dreamy stories take time and care to create, and your support helps this universe grow, one soothing tale at a time. The days passed, and the golden thread glowed brighter than the sun itself. The prince was overjoyed. He called for musicians, feasts, and dancers in the courtyard. He announced that the girl who spun gold, the mysterious, quiet Quashiba, would soon be his queen. But while the island celebrated, Quashiba's heart remained quiet. Her thoughts, like the tide, pulled inward. She knew something others did not. The gold was not her doing, and the debt she owed was not yet paid in full. Still, she smiled, as queens must. She walked among silk and scent, wearing fine robes stitched with thread that once sat dull and gray at her feet. But late at night, she would sit by the open window, listening for the rustle of leaves, or the tapping of little feet. On the eve of her wedding, the prince summoned her once again, not to a banquet, nor to a ceremony, but to a third room, larger than all the others combined. Piles of thread stacked high like hay bales, almost reaching the ceiling. The air smelled of dust and cotton. The door creaked shut behind her, and the prince, standing in the doorway, said softly, "One last time, my golden girl. Do this for me, and all the kingdom shall be yours." Then he left her, alone again, with the weight of impossible work, and the memory of a shimmering, mischievous little man who always came when the night was thickest. And sure enough, as moonlight crept through the cracks, as the room fell into stillness, he came. Litman. Just as before, he emerged from the shadows like a flicker of candlelight, his golden skin glowing softly in the dimness. "Well now," he said, brushing his small hands together, "seems you and I make quite the team." Quashiba nodded, her voice quiet. "You've spun gold for me twice. I owe you twice already." Litman grinned wide, showing teeth like pearls. "Aye, but the third time. The third time calls for something special." She waited, her breath shallow. "This time," he said, circling her once more, "I ask for something not made of beads or brass, not trinket or thread. No. This time, I want your firstborn child." The words hung in the air like thunder without rain. Quashiba's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her belly, not because it held life, but because it held fear. She didn't yet have a child. She wasn't yet a mother. But she knew what such a promise meant. In the old stories, a name carried weight. A word could bind a soul. And a bargain was sacred. But a child is a heart outside the body, she whispered. Litman looked at her kindly, as if he understood. And maybe, in his strange way, he did. "You don't have to say yes," he said, voice soft as sugar cane leaves brushing in the wind. "But if you don't, come morning, you'll have no gold. And no gold means no crown. And no crown means," he trailed off, letting the silence speak the rest. Quashiba turned to the thread piled high around her. She saw her mother's proud eyes, the prince's ambitious smile, the villagers who once laughed, and her own hands, the hands that had always done their best. Slowly, heavily, she nodded. "I agree." Litman's eyes shimmered. He stepped to the spinning wheel and began to work. The room lit up with the rhythm of spinning, the pulse of transformation. Thread became treasure. Cotton became coin. He danced as he worked, humming tunes that had no beginning and no end. And by dawn, as the first bird called through the trees, the task was done. The prince opened the door, and the light from the room spilled into the hall like honey poured from a clay jar. He said nothing, just took her hand, kissed her fingers, and led her away. And so Quashiba became queen. There were trumpets in the streets. The people cheered. A river of flower petals flowed from the palace steps. Her robes were woven with gold, her hair crowned with coral and stars. And time, as it always does, moved on. Seasons passed. The queen ruled with kindness and grace. And soon, in the warmth of spring, she gave birth to a child, a beautiful boy, with eyes the color of deep rivers and skin like spun honey. She had almost forgotten. Almost. But magic always remembers. On the 7th night after her child's birth, when the moon was full and fat, Litmon returned. He stood at the foot of her bed, silent, shimmering, his eyes more sorrowful than wicked. "I've come to collect what's owed," he said gently. Quashiba clutched the baby to her chest. "Please," she whispered, tears welling. "Anything else? Take my gold. Take the crown. But don't take my child." Litmon hesitated, looking not at her, but at the child, as if he, too, felt the weight of the moment. Then he spoke slowly. "I am a creature of magic and bargain. But I am not without mercy. I'll give you a chance. 3 nights. 3 guesses. If you can call me by my true name, then I shall leave and never return. If not, the child is mine." And with that, he vanished, leaving only the soft scent of jasmine and the chill of dread behind him. The night after Litmon's visit was long and full of shadows. Queen Quashiba sat in her chamber, the baby asleep in her arms, the moonlight painting silver across the floor. Her heart beat softly beneath the child's head, steady, but heavy. The tiny, perfect weight of her son brought her both joy and fear. For she knew now that words held power. That promises, once made, could stretch across seasons, across silence, and return, even after joy had blossomed. She had 3 nights. 3 guesses. And the name of a magical man to find. That first night, she summoned her most trusted attendants. Old women from the village, wise men from the coast, traders who'd wandered through hills and jungle. She asked for every name they had ever heard, no matter how strange or forgotten. They filled parchment with lists, names of spirits and river folk, forest creatures and ancient kings. And when night returned, so did Litmon. He stepped into her chamber without sound, glowing like an ember in the darkness. His eyes gleamed, his little hat tipped just so. "Well now," he said, arms behind his back, "shall we begin, my queen?" Quashiba's voice was steady, though her hands trembled ever so slightly. "Is your name Kasai?" Litman chuckled. "Or a beam?" He shook his head slowly. "Makwa." "No, no," he said, spinning in a playful little circle. "That's one night gone." And just like that, he vanished again, as if swept up by wind and moonlight. Quashiba let out a slow breath and held her baby close, listening to his soft, steady breaths. The first night was lost, but she would not give up. The second day, she sent her messengers far and wide, beyond the village, through forests, across rivers. She promised gold to anyone who could bring her unusual names, whispered ones, forgotten ones. By sunset, her chamber filled with scrolls and hushed voices. Names like Tambalo, Jubi, Sengu, Takataka. She memorized them all. That night, the golden shimmer returned. Litman arrived, tapping his fingers together, smiling with teeth like polished shells. "Well then, Queenie," he said, "shall we dance again?" Quashiba stood tall. "Is your name Zaboro?" Litman tilted his head. "No, but I like the sound of it." "Mangra." "Getting colder." "Kalu." He laughed, high and gleeful, like a child chasing fireflies. "2 nights gone," he whispered, and vanished once more. That night, Quashiba did not sleep. She held her child against her chest and stared into the dark, thinking hard. Names had power. And creatures of magic, they always liked riddles. Just before dawn, an old servant knocked gently at her door. She was a village woman, wrinkled and sweet, who had once told Quashiba lullabies when she was still just a child herself. "My queen," she said, "I went walking by the edge of the woods, and I heard a strange sound." Quashiba sat upright. "What kind of sound?" "Like a child's song," the old woman whispered. "But it weren't no child. There, in a clearing, I saw something glowing, small, like a boy, dancing in the moonlight." Her voice dropped to a hush. "And he was singing." Quashiba leaned forward. "What was the song?" The woman closed her eyes, trying to remember. Then, slowly, in a voice like wind through bamboo, she sang. "My name is Litman, bright as flame, I spun the gold, now I claim my gain, the queen won't guess, she'll try in vain, but I'll be gone when she calls my name." The queen felt her breath catch. The rhythm of the name, Litman, the same name he had given her at the very start. He had never hidden it, he had only wrapped it in mystery. She thanked the woman, kissed her hands, and waited. The third night fell gently over the kingdom. The stars peeked out one by one, and the palace grew quiet. And then, once more, he came. Litman danced into the room, humming to himself, pleased as ever. "This is it," he said. "Your final guess. If you fail, the child comes with me, as we agreed. Quashiba nodded, standing tall. She did not tremble now. Her voice was clear, like the first drop of rain on dry earth. Is your name Omari? Litman grinned. No. Is it Jamba? He wiggled his fingers. Still wrong. She leaned in close, eyes steady. Is it Litman? There was a silence, deep and golden. Litman's smile faltered. He blinked once. Then twice. You guessed it, he whispered, almost in awe. Then, without anger, without storm, he bowed low, deeply, respectfully, and smiled one last time. Well done, Queen, he said softly. Well done. And then, he vanished, leaving behind no glitter, no glow, only the soft scent of sweet ginger and a faint trail of dust on the floor. Quashiba turned to her child and held him close. The night was quiet, and her soul was finally free. The wind sighed through the windows of the royal nursery, stirring the gauzy curtains like sea foam floating on the breeze. Outside, the stars had begun their slow waltz across the heavens, and all of the island seemed to exhale. At long last, the Queen had won. She had spoken the name. And in that moment, the magic unraveled. Gone was the glowing little man with his clever smile and quick fingers. Gone was the shadow of the bargain that had hung like a cloud above her crown. In the space where Litman had once stood, there was now only silence and peace. Queen Quashiba sat beside her child's cradle, the soft golden glow of a nearby lantern illuminating her serene face. She leaned down, brushing her fingers gently across the child's cheek, feeling the breath of his dreams against her skin. She had faced the impossible, not with swords or fire, but with cleverness, patience, and the strength of a mother's love. And now, the boy was hers. Entirely hers. As dawn crept over the horizon, a hush settled across the palace. The prince, now king, noticed a change in Quashiba. She spoke more often in quiet tones, sang lullabies that even the wind leaned in to hear. She would sometimes pause in the gardens and watch the butterflies, as if remembering something from another world. When he asked her what had changed her so, she only smiled. "There are some debts you pay with courage," she said. "And some victories that come in silence." She never told him the full truth, not of Litman, not of the bargain, not of the spinning wheel or the glowing thread. That part of her story belonged to the moonlight, the whispering trees, and the ancestors who watched from beyond. Instead, she ruled with grace. Her reign became legend. The queen who brought prosperity not by sword or war, but with golden cloth and silver wisdom. She ensured no mother in her kingdom went hungry, that every child had a bed, that song and story were valued just as much as jewels and coin. And every year, on the night of her son's birth, she would light a single candle in the window, just one, soft and steady. A quiet thank you, or perhaps a farewell. Years passed, as they always do. The boy grew tall and strong, with laughter like warm rain and eyes full of wonder. He would one day become king, but first, he spent long hours with his mother, listening to the gentle, rhythm-laced tales she told. She taught him that names have power, that kindness can be sharper than blades, that true gold comes not from thread, but from truth. And as for the old spinning wheel, the one that had once whirred under Litman's touch, it was placed high in the palace tower, covered with a soft cloth, never touched again. But sometimes, when the moon was full, the guards swore they heard it hum softly, just for a moment, like a memory passing through. And so, dear dreamer, we come to the close of our tale. The Girl Who Spun Gold is more than a story of magic. It's a tale of wit, of heart, and of how even the smallest among us can challenge the powerful, with only the strength of a name. This particular version comes from the Caribbean, where oral traditions blend African, European, and island folklore into vibrant reimaginings. It's inspired by the old European tale of Rumpelstiltskin, but given new life with the warmth, rhythm, and color of Caribbean culture, where grandmothers pass down stories like heirlooms, and every tale holds a deeper song. The character of Litman is unique to this retelling, sometimes playful, sometimes ominous, but always a reminder that magic is never free, and that cleverness is the truest kind of power. Thank you for listening tonight, traveler of dreams. If this tale brought calm to your evening or a spark of wonder to your heart, I'd be so grateful if you subscribe to this channel. Here at Dreamy Tales Universe, we spin stories from every corner of the world, slow, soft, and made for nights just like this one. Leave a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from, and which corner of the world you'd like to visit next through story. Until then, sleep well, dream deep, and may the gold you find in life be the kind that never fades. Now that you've enjoyed a soothing bedtime story, it's time to relax even deeper and drift into a restful sleep. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and take a slow, deep breath in and out. Let go of the day's thoughts, worries, and tension. This is your time to unwind, to embrace tranquility, and to surrender to the gentle embrace of sleep. Let's begin by focusing on your breath. Take a deep breath in, filling your lungs completely, and now, slowly exhale, releasing any tension. Again, inhale deeply, letting calmness fill your body, and exhale, letting go of all the stress of the day. Now, gently bring awareness to your body. Start with your feet. Feel them become warm and heavy, completely relaxed. Move up to your legs, letting any tension melt away. Your hips and lower back are soft, sinking into comfort. Your abdomen and chest rise and fall effortlessly with each breath, releasing any tension with every exhale. Your shoulders, arms, and hands are completely at ease, the weight of the day dissolving. Your neck and jaw unclench, your forehead smoothens, and your entire face relaxes as a gentle wave of calm washes over you. Now, Imagine yourself standing in a beautiful meadow under a vast night sky. The stars above twinkle softly, casting a gentle glow. A cool, refreshing breeze brushes against your skin. You take slow, peaceful steps along a soft path, feeling the earth beneath your feet. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers. Fireflies dance in the distance, glowing like tiny stars. With each step, you feel lighter, calmer, at peace. The worries of the day fade away as you immerse yourself in this serene, dreamlike world. Ahead, a gentle stream flows, reflecting the moonlight like silver ripples. You sit by the water's edge, listening to its soothing melody. The rhythmic flow of the water syncs with your breath, deepening your sense of relaxation. As you sit by the stream, you begin to let go of everything weighing on your mind. Each thought drifts away like leaves floating down the river, disappearing into the distance. You feel lighter, completely at ease, as if cradled by the universe itself. Your eyelids grow heavier, and your body surrenders to deep relaxation. A soft whisper in the breeze tells you, you are safe. You are at peace. You are ready for deep, restful sleep. The stars above seem to glow even softer, watching over you, guiding you into a night of healing rest. Now, allow yourself to drift even deeper. With each breath, your body becomes heavier, sinking into the warmth and safety of your bed. A warm golden light surrounds you, filling you with a deep sense of comfort and love. This light wraps around you like a gentle cocoon, protecting you as you surrender to sleep. Every muscle is at ease. Every breath is slow and steady. Your mind becomes quieter, thoughts fading into soft whispers. There is nothing left to do, nowhere to be, just this moment of pure rest. The space between thoughts grows longer, until there is only stillness, peace, sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. You are safe. You are loved. You are at peace. Your body is healing. Your mind is at rest. You are floating, drifting deeper into sleep. Sleep well, dear dreamer. May your night be filled with beautiful dreams, and may you wake up feeling refreshed and renewed. Until next time, rest well.